It was a fever dream of white, a silence so profound it seemed to swallow the very light. The USS Jeannette was not merely stuck, she was entombed, a ghost ship in a frozen ocean that stretched to forever. 2 years had passed since Captain George Washington DeLong sailed her into the Arctic, chasing the dream of a warm, open sea at the North Pole. Now, far from the bustling docks of San Francisco, far from the comfort of a known world, 33 men, Americans all, were witnessing their grand venture morph into a brutal, unimaginable epic of survival. They had set out to conquer the top of the world. They were about to discover that the world had no top, only a vast, indifferent, killing heart of ice. Chapter 1. The San Francisco Siren. The year was 1879, and America was a nation intoxicated by progress. The Transcontinental Railroad had stitched the coasts together. Edison was illuminating the cities, and the concept of an unconquered frontier was quickly becoming a myth, everywhere, that is, except the very top of the globe. The North Pole remained the ultimate blank space on the map, a geographic holy grail shrouded in rumor. Some spoke of a vast, temperate open polar sea, a Garden of Eden beyond the ice barrier, while others warned of an impenetrable fortress of perpetual winter. The man who stepped into this void was a figure of pure, disciplined American ambition, Lieutenant George Washington DeLong, U.S. Navy. DeLong was not a romantic dreamer in the mold of earlier doomed Arctic explorers. He was a meticulous, iron-willed officer whose very name, George Washington, seemed to carry the burden of national expectation. He was handsome, severe, and possessed of a chillingly focused belief in his own destiny. His mission, as conceived by the eccentric and powerful newspaper baron James Gordon Bennett, Jr., owner of the New York Herald, was not merely to find the pole, but to plant the American flag on what Bennett grandiosely called the most sublime spot on earth. Bennett, a man who saw the world as a stage for his own dramatic headlines, bankrolled the entire expedition. He bought a battered British gunboat, the HMS Pandora, and had it refitted in San Francisco with a new name, a new purpose, and a new mythology, the USS Jeannette. The docks of San Francisco in July 1879 were a scene of chaotic electric energy. A roar of cannons and a deafening chorus of ship whistles drowned out the shouts of well-wishers and the curses of the rigging crew. The Jeannette, newly fortified with 7 inches of solid white oak along her waterline, stood gleaming, her masts tall and proud, a symbol of American mechanical and moral superiority, ready to defy the ancient, barbaric cold. But beneath the patriotic fervor and the waving flags, the seeds of the coming disaster were already sown. The crew DeLong commanded was a microcosm of the turbulent, post-Civil War American working class, a mix of seasoned veterans and naive enthusiasts. There was engineer George W. Melville, a Scottish-born mechanical prodigy, a man of profound geniality and endless stamina, who only understood the heart of the ship's temperamental engines. He saw the Arctic not as a foe, but as a solvable engineering problem. In stark contrast was Dr. James Ambler, the ship's physician, a quiet, melancholy Southerner haunted by the war. Ambler was not merely there to tend to wounds. He was the keeper of the men's fragile sanity, the last line of defense against the creeping paranoia of isolation. And then there was the ship itself, the Jeannette. She was a beauty, yes, but her history was troubled, her refitting perhaps rushed. DeLong, in his obsessive quest for order, had ignored several critical structural warnings. The most alarming of these was the design of her propeller, fixed and non-retractable, a vulnerable anchor dangling beneath the hull, waiting for the first hostile embrace of the polar ice. On the eve of departure, Bennett had sent DeLong a wire not of good wishes, but of command, which perfectly captured the hubris of the age. "We expect you to bring back the pole, Captain, and we expect it in one piece." DeLong, his jaw set, had folded the telegram and tucked it into his breast pocket. He believed, with the certainty of a man who has never truly failed, that he could fulfill both demands. He believed in the prevailing scientific theory of the day that the Arctic currents, specifically the warm westward-moving Kuroshio current off Japan, would clear a path through the ice and carry his ship to the fabled open polar sea, a navigational shortcut to the pole. The plan was simple, audacious, and utterly dependent on a theory that was, in fact, a complete fabrication. Sail north through the Bering Strait, find the opening, and power the Jeannette through a navigable, ice-free sea to glory. On July 8, 1879, the Jeannette slipped her moorings and headed into the Pacific, a vessel heavy with hope and the weight of a nation's dreams. The cheers faded into the mist, and the crew settled into the rhythm of the sea, blissfully unaware that within a few short months the vast, silent machinery of the Arctic would seize their ship, their journey, and their very existence, transforming them from explorers into victims in a land that cared nothing for human ambition. The new Siberian islands awaited them, not as the promised gateway, but the iron jaws of a continental-scale trap. The ship, the mission, and the men were about to be devoured by the very wilderness they had come to conquer. Their story would not be one of triumph, but of an agonizing 2-year test of the human spirit against the most powerful and indifferent landscape on Earth, leading to an ending that would shock and fascinate the American public for decades. A saga of desperate walks, frozen mutinies, and a final, terrible sacrifice in the uncharted vastness of Siberia.